I think of a hurricane, usually think of like lots of rain and wind.
A lot of destruction and like buildings just gone.
So we're here to just get them help.
It's an often overlooked coast that Hurricane Michael revealed. Not an inch of Panama City was untouched by the wrath of this storm.
It's an experience no one should have to go through.
1 month later, a different kind of storm raced up the coast. 7 middle schoolers from Manatee County who wanted to help, but didn't know what they were going to face.
It's like came out of a game or something. Like, this isn't normal.
You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
With open arms and open hearts, the community welcomed these teenagers.
Oh, there's a finger! Sorry.
Every box filled with donated items, carried like precious cargo.
Thank you so much, because you just don't know how far this will be able to go.
Oh, thank you.
Not only for Greater Friendship Church family, but also for the community of Panama City.
But it was the two groups of kids blended together that may have been the highlight of the trip, playing joyfully, oblivious to the devastation around them.
Pride. Just proud of them. They worked so hard to make all this happen.
They say restricted or something.
A learning moment that never could have been taught in a classroom. Each student experiencing the destruction through their own lens.
We were just talking about how we take everything for granted and how that we should really just be happy with what we have, and that we couldn't imagine ourselves in this situation.
That through everything they still had hope and everything, and it's just really inspiring, and I hope that they all know that like we're there for them as well.
Panama City, a coast that will be remembered for its strength and thankful for those with a giving heart. Lauren Verno, Spectrum, Bay News 9.
Every chance I get, I'm riding.
I think it's in me. When I'm out here, I'm free.
Most days, they're city slickers, but give them some boots, buckles, and stirrups, and they're bucking stereotypes of what a traditional cowboy looks, acts, and sounds like.
Oh my God, I've been riding horses since I was knee-high to a duck.
Growing up in the country, Kerry White Sr. was introduced to wrangling and riding by working on a farm.
You gotta look back on your heritage, you gotta look back on your history and realize that whatever's in you, it's gonna come out of you. That's where it comes from.
Determined to share their love for horses and the history of black cowboys with the community, a group was formed. They call themselves Cowbros.
It means a lot to me to have the camaraderie that I have with the other black cowboys.
As the posse rides at JM Farms in Plant City, the Cowbros feel right at home.
And see, the misconception is that there are no black cowboys or African-American cowboys. There are cowboys of all colors.
History backs them up. Researchers say some of the earliest cowboys in Florida were black.
If you go back and look at your history, you know, cowboys were your blacks, Hispanics, they were considered as your cowboys. And, you know, the Caucasians was necessarily considered as your cattlemen.
Like those cowboys before them, they do traditional chores like cow herding, sorting, and exercising the horses.
What I love about this one? This is my baby here. Her name is Brickhouse. I had her now for 10 years.
The men say the horses are a lot more than just animals to them. They also become like family.
My wife has actually said that you're gonna have to make a choice between me or the horses, and I said, see you.
And it's the respect that the animal brings to the table. It's the love that the horse demands in exchange. It's just respect.
History anchors them, the bond's unbreakable.
As long as I'm of sound mind and body, I will have a horse, I will be on a horse.
I'll be riding horses till I die.
In Hillsborough County, Lori Davison, Spectrum, Bay News 9.
Be a nuisance where it counts. Do your part to inform and stimulate the public to join your action.
Just outside of the high school that bears her name hang the words of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
Be depressed, discouraged, and disappointed at failure and the disheartening effects of ignorance, greed, corruption, and bad politics. But never give up.
For these students, the quote has taken on new meaning.
It does, and it inspires me every day when I walk into that school. It makes me feel so proud.
But to understand why, we have to take a step back in time and learn a bit more about Douglas.
She was tiny with these large oversized hats, but believe me, as her lore and reputation grew, you as a politician or office holder didn't want to have to be confronted with her. She came here in 1915.
Dr. Paul George, a historian at History Miami, saw Douglas speak once, about 10 or so years before her death in 1998.
She was involved in many women's causes, and she had this really adventuresome life, but also a life that was meaningful.
Douglas moved to Miami in 1915, eventually settling into this Coconut Grove cottage. George says it's where the activist did much of her work, most notably the book The Everglades, River of Grass. Preserving the Everglades, says George, was a cause Douglas took up later in life, long after her time advocating for both women's and civil rights.
She was very outspoken, she was articulate, just very strong opinions, but she could always back them up with information.
Dr. George calls Marjorie Stoneman Douglas ahead of her time, an unexpected force to be reckoned with. And the same could be said about the students, survivors, right here in Parkland.
I just remember at 225, my life changed forever. It was surreal. It was like I didn't believe what was happening. Then after a few days, it finally hit me that 17 people died at my school.
Since then, students like Adam Buchwald and Zach Hibsham have been channeling their grief into a movement that is now sweeping the nation.
Any kid under 18 can't vote.
The two best friends even designed their own campaign called Parents Promise to Kids.
We want the politicians to hear our voices. With this contract, we're giving children a voice.
So far, the teens say more than 1,200 adults have signed their contract, a promise to vote for candidates supporting gun control on behalf of their children. Do you think the lawmakers are taking notice now?
They better be shaking in their boots because we're coming after them.
It's a familiar fighting spirit now that you know more about Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
She's still with us. She would be with us every step of the way.
Perhaps in her signature glasses and oversized hat, encouraging students to be a nuisance where it counts, and most importantly, to never give up. In Parkland, Kate McVeigh, Spectrum, Bay News 9.
There's still a lot of damage here. A lot of damage.
We weren't set up for a disaster of this nature.
Way more than the eye catches.
Recovery has been slow in the Florida Keys since Hurricane Irma brought destruction to the area, leveling neighborhoods and disrupting life in a place famous for its laid-back living.
All I can say, it's been the grace of God getting us through.
1 year after the storm, Erica Logan's house in Big Pine Key remains a work in progress. There's still a huge hole in the roof.
Below this switch right here, the water line.
And her handyman, Richard Wilson, explains the inside had to be gutted because of flood damage.
We just rebuild and start all over again.
For many hurricane victims, that rebuilding hasn't been swift or easy.
I think that we're almost to the halfway mark.
Stephanie Capel is the chairman of the county's long-term recovery group.
It's encouraging to be where we are today. It's still a little discouraging because we're not fixed.
Issues with insurance claims and slow federal funding are being blamed, but those aren't the only problems.
A lot of my friends had to move out and leave. There's nowhere for them to rent, nothing affordable. Everything's $2,500 to $3,000.
Recovery workers say if there's any silver lining to all of this, it's that Hurricane Irma highlighted the need for more affordable housing here in the Keys, and there is some new home construction underway. It's about small victories, like the 760 square foot cottage built by the Florida Keys Community Land Trust.
They say a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. We're starting with one house. We're starting with one step.
Construction's underway on several more, with rents depending on income.
It was a mess.
Meanwhile, back at Erica's, the repairs continue.
It was a blessing to have Richard come into my life because he knows how to fix anything.
Even a lonely heart. You see, after the hurricane, Erica's handyman became her husband.
I lost all the stuff in my house, but the Lord blessed me with a husband that can help me to get it restored.
So while they're not exactly sailing off into the sunset,
we're a different bunch of people that bounces back. We're spatial.
And determined Irma won't spoil their newlywed glow. In the Florida Keys, Lori Davison, Spectrum News.